What up, dogs? What up, bros? What up, brah? Let's all pretend we're from Hawaii. Let's call each other bras. Where the hell did that come from? I don't get that one. That's just, I'll have to look up the history on that. That's interesting. Anyway, this is the Alpha Male 2.0 podcast, and I am Caleb Jones. And I make a high location dependent income while dating multiple attractive women, and I show men like you how to do the same thing. And specifically on dating women, there has been a recurring misunderstanding with dating skills or seduction skills or whatever you want to call them, how to get laid. And this extends into how to manage relationships, certainly how to manage long-term non-monogamous alpha male 2.0 relationships. And that is the thought. And I don't blame guys who have this thought because it's kind of a logical thought if you think about it. And that is the thought or the concept that if I learn these particular things to do, that will help me get laid. Or if I learn these specific set of skills, like Liam Neeson had Taken, if I learn these specific set of skills, that will enable me to maintain a long, low drama, happy relationship with a bunch of hot women who will let me have sex with other hot women. Everything will be great. If I do certain things, these things will produce results for me. And honestly, in most areas of life, that's true. That is how it works. If you do this, you will not get results. If you do that, you will get results. So you need to learn to do what gets results and then just do those things and you'll be successful. Certainly in business, that is true. There are certain things you need to do in business, and if you do them, the odds of you being successful are very high. Instead of 80% plus of businesses go out of business within the first 2 or 3 years, you will actually invert that and you'll have an 80% success rate as long as you do certain things. I've talked about things in my books, in my courses, and all my other content, in my Sovereign CEO content. You can check all that out if you want. So that is generally true in most areas of life. In terms of dating and relationships, both these things, in terms of getting laid and in terms of maintaining the woman, or in the Alpha Male 2.0 case, women you like long-term in a low drama way where it's harmonious and it's non-monogamous, it's actually quite the opposite. Now, are there certain things you need to learn how to do to be successful in these areas? Yes, there are certain things you need to learn how to do to be successful on a first date or a second date. There are certain things you need to learn how to do to maintain a woman in a long-term, relatively low-drama, harmonious way, even when she knows you're out having sex with other women. Yes, there are certain things you need to do. That's true. But, and here's the interesting thing, and here's where women and dating and relationships are different than other areas of success in terms of a man's life. And that is that men are so bad at it. Men do so many things wrong when it comes to dating and relationships with women. Men do almost everything wrong from the very beginning of the interaction all the way into the first date, the second date, into the relationship management phase. They do just about everything wrong. The typical guy. I'm not talking about the alpha male pickup artist guy. I'm talking about the typical guy, including the typical cool guy. They do so many things wrong by default in these parts of their lives that if all they did was to stop doing the wrong stuff, they would become a lot more successful. What do I mean? Oh, a few things. So first of all, I am not the person to observe this. Back in my heyday of the pickup artist world, I heard Neil Strauss, who used to be called Style back then. He said this in an interview. He said, success with women, and he was talking mostly about pickup and dating and things like that. Success with women is more about what not to do than what to do. And when I heard him say that, I immediately just nodded my head. I said, yep, that's it. That is exactly right. It is more about unlearning the things that your outdated biology and your incorrect false societal programming have told you to do with what makes sense with women, and unlearning those things and stopping doing those things, taking those things out of your behavioral patterns, than it is to learn a new cool technique. And what most guys think is, well, if I learn a cool technique, that'll get me laid. If I learn a cool technique, that'll give me her phone number. If I learn a cool technique, that'll get me to sex much more quickly. If I learn a cool technique, that'll ensure that she'll stay with me forever, quote unquote forever, or longer, what have you. If I do certain techniques. To a degree, that's true. But to a much larger degree, that isn't true. To a much larger degree, if you took the average typical guy, and I don't mean the hopelessly horrible extreme beta male. I don't mean the total angry incel. I mean the normal typical guy, okay? The normal typical average everyday guy who looks like an average guy, who is really an average guy, and you took him and you just pulled him aside and rewired his brain to stop doing all the things he was doing wrong when he asks women out on dates, when he approaches women both real life and online, when he goes on a first or second date, when he maintains a sexual relationship with a woman. If you didn't teach him anything new, you taught him nothing new, no new dating skills at all, no new relationship management skills at all. That's all. And all you did was deduct and remove behaviors from his behavior set. He would immediately, the next day, within a week, have a massive increase in results in his woman life. I'm serious. This is true. This is accurate. And if you taught him some skills, those would largely be it for the average guy, the icing on the cake. That would just be extra bonus stuff. He would start getting laid more often. He would start having sexual success and or relationship success with much more attractive women. He would have much more harmonious relationships with women. He would have longer relationships with women. All these things would occur if he just stopped doing the things that most men do in relationships in terms of dating and in terms of relationship management. And this is one of the few areas that applies to both, because I've talked a lot about how dating skills, pickup skills, getting laid skills are very different than relationship management skills. That's why you have all these pickup artists and ex-pickup artists who are great at getting laid, but almost to a T, and it hurts me to say this, but it's true, almost to a T, when they get into serious relationships, it's a clusterfuck. They're just as bad, if not worse, than beta males. It's terrible because they have really good dating / pickup skills, get laid skills. They have no relationship management skills. And the inverse to that would be the really nice, sweet, right-wing, Christian conservative beta male who's a really good boyfriend and a really good husband. But as soon as, not if, but when, his girlfriend / wife leaves him, which is what they're biologically wired to do, and which is most statistically probable, he's fucked. He doesn't know what to do, and he basically gets depressed for 5 years because he doesn't know how to go out in the real world and bring a new woman into his life, or at least not with any speed, right? Because he has relationship management skills, sort of. He has no dating skills. That's why you need both sets of skills. But my point is that this concept that I explained right now is one of the few concepts that applies to both. Guys do so many things wrong by default in their dating, get laid, pickup lives, and they do so many things wrong by default in their relationship lives. This applies across the board. So if all you did was to stop doing certain things that most men do when they approach women, when they go on first dates, when they have relationships with women, you would have much higher results, even if you didn't learn any new specific techniques. This is why Neil Strauss said correctly, success with women is mostly about what not to do than what to do. Now, I will give you some very specific examples. So in one of my dating books, the book called Get to Sex Fast at gettosexfast.com, that book describes exactly step-by-step how to go from the very beginning of the first date to the end of the second date within 2 to 4 hours of FaceTime, spending less than $27, getting from 2 to 4 hours to sex with a brand new woman, okay? And the most important chapter in that book, and I say it in this chapter, I actually say it in the first page of that chapter, I say, this is the most important chapter in this book. I forget what chapter it is. I think it's chapter 12. I don't remember. Those of you who have the book, you can look it up. And you should get that book if you want to be more successful with it because it'll help you. But in that chapter, I list, I believe the number is 21 don'ts for first dates. Okay. All it does is it lists 21 things and it gives detailed descriptions of what those things are and why they're important to not do. And I basically say at the beginning of that chapter, if you just don't do these things, these 21 things, and that's it, you change no other behaviors in your woman life, you will immediately, and I mean this literally, you will immediately become more successful with women. Immediately. Because just by not doing the things that turn women off, you're going to end up with some women who like you. Just how this works. Well, Caleb, what are the 21 things? Well, I can't list all 21. If you want to know all 21, I think that's number 21 or 22. If you want to know that, go ahead and get the book. Get to sexfast.com. It's there. Go ahead and buy it. You can get it on Amazon and get it the ebook copy. You can get the audiobook version on Audible. It's all modalities. But I'll give you some examples, like spending too much time on your phone, okay, on a first date. Boom. If you do that regularly, and a lot of guys do, if you just stop doing that, your odds will go up. Now, here's what's interesting about that. And this applies to a lot of these other don't do things or list of don'ts. Well, Caleb, women do that on first dates. Women are always on their phones on first dates, especially the young girls. I mean, they're always on their first dates. They're their noses in their phone on Instagram, and it's rude. I don't like it. Okay, let me explain something to you. Women can get laid whenever they want. Okay, do women have to try to get laid? No. Okay, no, they don't. Do women have to learn game to fuck guys? No, they don't. No, at the worst case scenario, they might have to learn some level of game if they're looking to score like, high-end multimillionaires. But that's a whole different world. That's a 1% thing. So women do not have to try to get laid. Does that apply to you? Can you just sit back and get laid and not worry about? No, you're a guy. We actually have to learn game and practice game. We have no choice. That's the way it goes. That's why a lot of guys, when they're doing online dating, they will complain to me, I don't like it when, I have a lot of this complaint for you guys. I don't like it when, what do you do when, or I don't like it when, I give women an opener online and I get back a one-word answer like hi or hey or whatever. Or, why do women do that? Women shouldn't do that. They should engage in conversation and they should be just like, they don't have to try, dude. You are the one that needs to push the conversation forward. So that's many times. The onus is on you, the man, to push the process forward because women don't need to. So instead of getting butthurt about it and getting all pissed off about your philosophy about how it should be a 50-50 thing, and that's not the way the real world works. So women don't have to do a lot of these don'ts in order to get laid. So this applies to you and me as men. It does not necessarily apply to women, okay? Have you ever met a woman who was average looking, maybe moderately cute, who was a total bitch, yet she got laid all the time? Yeah, that's how it works, right? Now, can you do that if you're a guy? Can you be an average guy and be a total prick and be totally uncharismatic and get laid left and right? Unless you're a celebrity, the answer is no. So these rules don't apply to us. The rules are different for women. I know it's not fair. I know it sucks. I know it's terrible and awful. Instead of being a little baby and complaining about these things, move forward with what actually works. So going back to my original concept. Another example on a first date, another don't, is don't treat the wait staff like shit. So a lot of guys will be nice to the woman they're talking to, and they'll be really mean to the waitress or the wait staff. Or they'll be really condescending or really arrogant. That is an immediate turnoff for a lot of women. So if you just be nice, you don't have to be nice. Just don't be a dick to the wait staff. Just stop doing that, and guess what'll happen? Another thing is bragging. Bragging about how much money you make, or bragging about who your dad is, or bragging about your new car and bullshit like that. Just stop doing that. Just don't do that. I'm not saying you have to be Mr. Humble and say, oh, I don't make a lot of money and I'm just a nice little humble guy. No, I'm not giving you techniques. I'm telling you what not to do. Here's a huge one. This applies to both younger men and older men, more so for older men, but younger men have this problem too. Do not on a first date bitch about an ex. Bitch about your ex-wife. Bitch about your ex-girlfriend. Oh my God. You start doing that on a first date, your odds of success drop down to maybe 5%. It's really bad, and tons of men do this. I'm shocked at the number of men who do this. And all you have to do is not do that. I'm not saying you talk about your ex a lot, or you speak in glowing terms about your ex. No, just don't do that. Just don't say negative things about your ex. Don't bitch about your ex. Don't do that. We could have an entire conversation of what to do. Right now, I'm just telling you what not to do. Now, this isn't a podcast on the do's and don'ts of a first date. I'm using this as examples of many things that guys do on first dates, second dates, third dates in the relationship that they shouldn't fucking do. And if you just stop doing them, you're going to get better. So what are some bad relationship things that men do? Let's get out of the dating phase. Let's get into the relationship management phase now. What are some common examples of what typical guys do? I probably don't even have to tell you this because you're probably already doing them. Here's one. Texting women every day. The woman you're dating. Texting a woman every goddamn day. No, just don't do that. Now, well, Caleb, when should I text her? What should I say when I text her? That's all technique. That's not what this podcast is about. I'm just telling you what not to do. Stop doing that. If you date women, you have to text them every fucking day. Or in some extreme cases, I've talked to a number of guys who do this. You call them every day. You're actually on the phone with them every day. Don't fucking do that. Now, if you're married or you live with her, different story, of course. But if you don't live with her, what the fuck are you? Just don't do that. Stop doing that. And your results in your relationship life will increase. Here's another big one that most men do. And let me give you some background on this first, because some of this might sound strange. Historically, as in many decades ago, when a man and woman started dating, it was usually the woman who started to define the relationship and pressure the man into something serious and pressure the man into something exclusive and move the relationship forward. That's usually, and it was the guy who was like, nah, who was kind of standoffish and didn't want to do it, wanted to keep his options open and shit like that, right? Those of you guys who are my age or older, you remember the 80s, right? You remember the 70s, right? It was usually women who were trying to corral men, and men were kind of like, yeah, you're cute and I like you, but I like her and I like her and I got to keep my options open. You remember all that. Now, is that the case today? No. As what's happened in the collapsing Western world in which we find ourselves, men and women have swapped. Men have become more feminine. Women have become more dominant. There's a lot of reasons for that I've discussed on my podcasts and videos and articles. We can talk about that some other time. But now, today, in most cases, not all, okay, but in most cases, it is the man who actually sits down and defines the relationship parameters and ropes the woman into monogamy or exclusivity or something like that well before the woman does. And typically it looks something like this, where within a week or two, or within, a week or two of having sex once or twice, the guy kind of looks at his arm and goes, well, so I think we should stop seeing other people because, I really like you. Fuck, drives me crazy just to say this stuff, but that's what men do now. And why do they do that? Because they're scared she might fuck another guy and they're all worried about it and they have one-itis and all the usual things that normal men do. Now, let me say this really quick. This is what normal men do. Some of you guys say, well, Caleb, that's what absolute losers do and the total desperate betas. No, motherfucker. This is now the norm. This is what most men do. Yes, they're beta males, but most men are betas. My estimate is around 70%. And that's been my estimate for the past 10, 15 years. I'm starting to think that number is going up, 75%, 80%. So that's the norm. This is the norm. This is what most men do. By the way, alpha males and woman experienced men will also do this with that one special girl who is quote unquote not like the rest. They'll jump into a serious relationship or define the relationship much too quickly, which does two things. A, it turns the woman off. It drops attraction. A woman is more attracted, generally speaking, not always, when a man is a little hesitant for these things, generally speaking. Number one. Number two, it rapidly increases the time at which she will start giving drama and demands to him. Because now she's going to get more comfortable and now she's going to get more established in a more serious relationship more quickly. And now she's going to start throwing rules at him, demands and things like that. And it just spirals out of control from there. So if you just don't do that, just keep your I've been saying to men for 15 years now, when you start dating a new woman, even if you think she's the greatest thing on earth, if you just keep your goddamn mouth shut about the relationship and just shut up and date her for several weeks or months and let her come to you. Let her bring this shit up, then handle it appropriately. Well, Caleb, how do you handle it? Go to haveopenrelationships.com. That is the ultimate open relationships manual. I talk about what actually to do. But again, in this podcast, I'm just telling you what not to do. If you just don't do that, even if you screw up when the woman finally starts pressuring you for something more serious, you will still have better results than the typical guy who immediately starts defining the relationship right up front because he likes the girl. Okay? Just don't do that. Just keep your goddamn mouth shut and enjoy her company. And ideally, as an alpha male 2.0, you're enjoying multiple women's company, at least 2 or more. Let's take it a step further now. Let's talk about live-in relationships, cohabiting relationships. What do men do? What do most men do that is totally fucking wrong and causes all kinds of problems in a typical cohabiting relationship? And again, I don't care if you're legally married or not. That is completely irrelevant to your day-to-day lifestyle. If you live with a woman full-time, you are married. You are living the lifestyle of a married man. I don't care what documents you signed or didn't sign or whether or not you're having sex with other women. None of these things matter. You're living the lifestyle of a married guy as soon as you move in with a woman. And so what are some things that in those type of relationships that most men do wrong? Well, here's one right off the bat. They combine all their finances. They move in together, and usually the woman says, we should have a joint checking account because that's just easier. It's more convenient for like groceries and paying the bills. And the guy goes, oh, okay, it's a good idea. Just don't do that. Just keep the account separate. You will have all kinds of problems down the road during the relationship and when the relationship ends, if you combine everything. Just don't do that. And now you've eliminated tons of problems that most cohabiting men have. That's just an example. There are tons of things. There are scores of things that men do wrong in the dating process, the relationship process, and even the live-in relationship process that if you just stop doing them, your results will be better. What I would suggest you do is to sit down and make a list of all of your typical behaviors at these various points. So point number 1 would be when you are trying to schedule a first date with a woman, a cold prospect. That could be day game, night game, online dating. I don't care how you do it. Okay, however you do it. What are your typical behavior sets? Do you come in like a monster, like a typical uncalibrated guy and say, hey, baby, you're really hot, and start telling her how hot she is and how you guys need to hang out? Yeah. Okay, you doing that? Well, write that down. By the way, you shouldn't do that. Write that down. Write down everything, your typical behavioral set when you're trying to meet a new woman, contact close, schedule first date, first meet, whatever. Okay. Then the next thing is when you meet up with a woman on a first date, or what they would call in a day game world, the day 2, we actually have the first real one-on-one meet. What are your typical behaviors in that? What are your typical behaviors in that scenario? Write them down. How do you normally handle that? How do you normally handle logistics? What do you normally talk about? Okay. When do you talk about them? How long does the date go? I teach 1-hour first dates. So how long does that typical first meet go? If you're like a typical guy, it's going to be 2, 3, 4 hours. What do you buy her on that first meet? Do you buy her dinner and drinks and end up with a bill that's $110? No, don't do that. But is that what you do? Then write that down. Then on the second date, the second meet, what do you typically do? Do you try to escalate to sex? Do you try to play it cool? What do you do? So that'd be the third list. So again, I'm going to go back. It's when you're scheduling the first date, when you're going on the first date, when you're going on the second date, then when you're in a relationship with her. A relationship means you have achieved lock-in. That means you've had sex with her at least twice on 2 different occasions, and now you're regularly seeing her. What are the typical things you do when you date a woman like that? The last 2, 3, 4 women you've dated, what do you typically do? And write those things down. And God forbid if you're an old man like me and you've lived with a woman, what were some things that you think you did when you lived with this woman? Most of you are not going to be in that category, but you older fuckers, what do you think you did that probably didn't work? Because you'll have a much better understanding once you have a failed live-in relationship. You'll be able to go back and say, oh yeah, I did this, I did that. I mean, I can certainly do that in my first marriage. I can look at my first marriage and say, I did this, I did that, I did this. These are things I should not have done. The next time I do this, I'm not going to do that. And I learned from my first marriage on not only what to do in my second marriage, the one I have now, but what not to do. It was a valuable process for me. And the problem is men don't go through this self-evaluation until they've had a huge major failure, usually in a live-in relationship that didn't work. They don't go through this process in terms of getting women's phone numbers, scoring first dates, what they do on a first date, what they do on a second date, and the relationship before it gets serious. They really don't even pay attention to those behaviors. And I promise you, if you're the typical guy, now look, if you're amazing, if you're banging 35 new women a year, like one of the guys was talking about in my last AMA, if you're just an absolute, very experienced pickup artist player dude, obviously I'm not talking to you. But if you're the typical guy who's sometimes has successes and sometimes a lot of failures and a lot of problems, you're doing all kinds of things incorrectly in your dating life that you just should stop doing. Just stop those things and you will be shocked. You will be very surprised at how much easier and more effective your woman life becomes without having to learn a single new technique. Now, am I saying you never need to learn techniques? No, some techniques are critical. The soft next is a very critical technique in relationship management. There are some techniques that are important, but what I'm telling you is still true. You can achieve a 50%, 80%, 2x, 3x boost in results just by ceasing certain behaviors. You can. And if you don't believe me, go through that exercise, write down the things you do, and just stop doing those things, or a few of them, and watch what happens. Watch the magic. You might be surprised. I hope this has helped, but this might be one of those podcasts or videos, if you're watching this on YouTube, where you may be thinking, well, this doesn't really help me. Caleb, you didn't really teach me anything. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Stop doing the things that aren't working for you. Well, Caleb, how do I know what those things are? If you really have no idea, if you write these things down and you look at these things and you say to yourself, I don't think you'll have this problem, but you might. You say to yourself, well, okay, here's what I'm doing. I have no idea if these things aren't working. Then you need to buy some materials. Start with mine if you want. Start with gettosexfast.com, that book, and then start with haveopenrelationships.com, that book. The Ultimate Open Relationships Manual and Get to Sex Fast, which covers the first date and second date in detail. And then as soon as you have sex twice, you roll into the Ultimate Open Relationships Manual, and that tells you what not to do as well as what to do. But try this out. Don't just poo-poo this by thinking this is too simple. Because this is the reason that most normal men either don't get laid at all or have a lot of problems in their woman life. It's because they're doing lots of things they shouldn't be doing. It's not because they don't know these magical button techniques where they press certain buttons and suddenly they get laid. That's not how this works. It's mostly about what not to do than what to do. I will see you in the next podcast. Have fun. Bye.